In the middle of the night, they would call out the 30 women one at a time and ask them who they thought was gay. Hi, my name's Laura Spaulding, and this is my story of how I overcame adversity. Growing up was challenging. My father was an alcoholic. He was very authoritarian, a drill instructor in the Marine Corps, and he treated us the same way. He would interrogate us. He would try and pressure holds on us. It was physically abusive, emotionally abusive, not the best household to grow up in. I was just counting the days until I was 18 years old, which just at that time seemed like forever. My mother was a very weak individual. She just kind of went along with whatever. My mother started beating me when I was 10 or 11 years old, and she didn't know how to punch, so she would hit me like this with her forearm. I would always block her hits, and then the next day her arm would be huge and swollen, and then she would yell at me and, "See what you did to me. This is what you did to me." She was complacent, but she participated as well. I didn't have an outlet. I have a younger brother. Growing up, he didn't speak a lot. He was just very quiet. It was very strange. Even though we lived under the same roof, we were very much strangers to one another. He was the favorite. He got preferential treatment. He got everything that I didn't do. They bought him a car when he was 16. They beat me up when I was 16. He did not have to go through near the stuff that I did. And I was very angry about that because I felt like he should have spoken up, and he never did. At the age of 13, he started stealing alcohol from my parents, became a dealer. Very, very different lives, despite the fact that we were under one roof. My father, he's a very control freak. He tried to control us in every way possible. And as I got older, his control was money. So he knew that I couldn't go anywhere because I didn't have a way to feed myself. I didn't have a place to live. I wasn't allowed to have friends. So what I was doing is, like, I was 16, 17 years old in high school, and my friends would come over at night and kind of sneak in the window, and we would just kind of hang out. I never did alcohol, but his form of control was, I don't want you to have any friends. I don't want you to have a support system. He would prevent me from any social activities whatsoever. So I started sneaking out as well, just to have a social life. And they caught me one night, and instead of, disciplining me or whatever, they just locked the doors and they're like, "Get out." And I went and lived with my best friend at the time and her family. There was 4 of them living in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. They were sharing rooms. It was a very small house. So when I moved in, there was 3 of us in 1 bedroom. So it was tight. I was in high school, so I couldn't work. I didn't have any way to contribute to the family, and I felt horrible about it. And I knew that that wasn't a long-term solution. I was still going to school every day. My best friend was taking me to school. She would drop me off across the street. So I would walk in with my backpack and nobody would know. I barely had any clothes. I was kind of wearing the same stuff. It was very, very difficult. I was just trying to figure out a way out at that time. And at my age, there just wasn't one. So I had to eventually go back to my house reluctantly and just kind of count the days until I was 18 to where I could get out. When I turned 18, I knew that I had no way to support myself. So to escape poverty, I stole my birth certificate from my parents' house and I enlisted in the Army. When I went in the military, I was very naive. The military was a means to an end for me. So I went in with the sole purpose of, for the next, 4 or 5 years, this is going to give me a place to live. It's hopefully going to teach me a skill, and it's going to give me the GI Bill so that I can get an education when I get out. I had my eye on the prize, and that's all I really cared about. I was given a short list of what you could do in the Army. I thought, I want to go to Ranger School. Can't do that. You're a woman. Okay. I was told more about what I can't do than what I can do. So I settled on military police. We had a drill sergeant that was female. She started to show preferential treatment to a female soldier, and rumors started, and that's how the witch hunt commenced. In the middle of the night, they would call out the 30 women that we had one at a time and ask them who they thought was gay. They would just give their opinions, and it was almost like, hey, the majority ruled. At the end of the day, it was myself, another girl, and then the female drill sergeant that ended up getting discharged. They wanted to incarcerate us for 5 5 years in prison for being gay, which they had no evidence and there was no admission of that whatsoever. So I was given a court-appointed attorney, but that's really kind of like sleeping with the devil. They're not really on your side at all. My peers pressured me to contact my parents, who didn't even know I was in the military, to see if they would assist me in getting me a civilian lawyer. I was very adamant against that, but I finally gave in because we were locked up, awaiting trial for this. So I gave in. We got phone calls once a week. So I made an outbound call and my mother answered the phone and was very kind of, "Why the fuck are you calling me?" type thing. And I said, "Well, I'm in the military and I need a lawyer. And I was wondering if you would help me out with that." And she says, "Why do you need a lawyer?" I said, "Well, they're charging me with being gay." And she said, "Well, are you?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Then you deserve it." And she hung up the phone. So I remember looking to my peers and saying, "I told you." I wasn't surprised. They locked us up in the barracks. There was just individuals in there that had charges against them. We were only allowed out to eat. And when we would go into the chow hall, they would announce us as Chapter 13s, which is gays. So I went through this for a couple of months. And one of my peers said something to me that just clicked. She said, "How long are you going to do this?" And I said, "As long as it takes." And she said, "Why are you fighting to be in an army that doesn't want you? Why are you fighting for a country that doesn't respect you or treat you as an equal? You're a second-class citizen." And it clicked to me. So I agreed that week to sign papers and get out. Life wasn't easy when I got out. I worked in a restaurant and I waited a year until I got accepted to the University of Tennessee. And honestly, it was probably the best time of my life. I was actually able to be free. I wasn't being controlled. I wasn't living in a bad environment. And it was absolutely liberating. When I graduated, I wanted to go into law enforcement. I had applied for a bunch of jobs everywhere, all over the country, and I wasn't getting hired. And it was because I had that rubber stamp on my military records that said homosexual. So they were discriminating against that and not hiring me. My father reached out to me and said, "I could get you a job." So he told me he was going to help me get a job in Kansas City, Missouri. I moved there. That's where he lived. Little did I know, he had made no efforts to help me get a job at all. It was all a scam to get me there, to control me once again, because I had to stay under his roof and I was willing to do that if it meant getting a job and then I could get out. I found out that he had never assisted me at all. So it took me about 18 months on my own to get hired. I went in to patrol and, I worked in the worst neighborhoods of Kansas City. I was asked to do undercover prostitution, where we would essentially take over a corner of a street and kick off the real prostitutes, and then we would take their spot. So about 18 months into it, I decided to apply for undercover narcotics. There was no other woman in that division. I started out there, I was very young and didn't know really anything about it. There wasn't any training involved. The more that I learned and the more that I did it, I realized, why are we even doing this? You're not making a dent. This is a thankless job that's honestly a waste of taxpayer money. It's not going to solve anything. There's no end to this whatsoever. There was a couple of instances where I was concerned with undercover prostitution, but I was never really scared. With narcotics, I definitely was. I would say almost on a daily basis. It's a miracle that I wasn't murdered. I was in narcotics for 18 months. And it felt like a lifetime. It was an environment that just was not healthy. It changes who you are as a person. And that's kind of when it opened my eyes to, I need to stop working for people and I need to work for myself. So I decided to get my MBA at night. One night I was working a homicide scene. The victim's mom asked me when we were coming back to clean it up. And we just kind of stared at each other and I was like, we don't clean that up. And she's like, then who does? So I went to CSI and I said, hey, who cleans this up? And they're like, I don't know. Went to homicide and I said, hey, do you know who cleans this stuff up? And they're like, we don't know and we don't care. It's not our problem. So I started doing some research and I realized that this is a niche. There was nothing where I was. Then I decided I'm going to do this. I packed my bags up, rented my house out, and drove to Florida. I'll never forget it. It was the best feeling in the world. So being a crime scene cleaner is very interesting because you get to see things that are different every single day. You are rewarded with a great before and after, and you're doing something for people that they really couldn't do for themselves. I love the work. It's very rewarding to me to be able to help these people in a situation where I wouldn't want to do it myself if it was my loved one. In 2016, I decided I wanted to franchise my business, and we have about 50 locations now across the country where I teach franchisees to do exactly what I'm doing and hopefully be as successful as I am. I have a life now that I never thought would be possible. I'm the happiest I've ever been. I have 3 kids. I am nothing like my parents are, thank God. I haven't seen or spoken to my parents in 2 decades. There's no love lost there, trust me. I couldn't be happier with getting out and just really surviving that horrible environment. The best advice I can give for somebody that is maybe growing up in a tough environment is that you don't have to let your environment define you. There is a way out, and it seems like it's completely ever to get to that point where you're free, but you got to just hang in there. It's a mental struggle. Lay low, do your thing, and then get out as soon as you can, but follow your dreams. Even if everybody tells you that you're going to fail. Everybody told me that my business idea was horrible and that it would go nowhere, but I didn't listen to anybody. You need to just follow your passion. If you fail, it's not a fail. You did better than everybody else that ever tried. I'm writing a book about my experiences, and the whole kind of premise of the book is even when you think that you're in an environment where you're never going to come out of it or it's a dead end, it's not. I kind of share my experiences of how I coped with things and how I got out, the chances that I took, that some worked and some didn't, but ultimately I got to be where I'm at today. Thank you guys for listening to my story. I hope it's helped somebody realize that it does get better and you can make things happen for yourself. If you'd like to learn more or follow me, my social links are here below.